We're back. This is episode 2. We weren't done. Um, this study is all about, again, this is for the Southeast Produce Council's Southern Innovation. What's new is the theme for the fall show. And one of the things that I think maybe was a head scratcher for people who don't have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids at home is new ways to reach new consumers. And you mentioned Roblox, and Roblox is hilarious to me because I guarantee you that most of the people in that room had no idea what you were talking about. But what is Roblox and why is this relevant for people?
Well, let me back up for another stat, and that was how many days a week do you eat fresh produce? And that's where we just see a gigantic gap. First of all, for the total population, in terms of so many people do not eat fresh produce every single day. But then we see this big gap between Gen Z, our younger shoppers, and boomers, the older generation in the marketplace. And first of all, I thought a really interesting set of findings there was that a lot of Gen Z and millennials very highly engaged with smoothies, with supplements, with these squeeze pouch things. And according to them, that very much replaces fresh produce. All that to say is we clearly are not connecting with some of those younger consumers the way we are with the older generations in the marketplace. So then if you think about, well, where do we advertise? And you think about our paper circular, our Facebook efforts, etc., that's not really where a lot of those younger shoppers are sitting anymore. And we got to thinking about, well, TikTok and what are some of the other areas where people spend hours and hours every single day. And virtual worlds was one of the things that came up. So Roblox was just an example of a virtual world. But yes, people spend hours on average a day on these different things, and they have characters and they go to Forever 21 or Nike or Tommy Hilfiger and they buy clothes for their virtual character. And then they take their virtual character to go to the virtual farmer's market and buy a virtual character for virtual lettuce and carrots and what have you. And, it just dawned on me that Chipotle, Nike, they have huge success and engagement with younger consumers in these virtual worlds. There's whole concerts that are happening in these virtual worlds where people not only pay to go to a virtual concert, but then also buy the merchandise, the t-shirts and the mugs and everything else as if you are going to a real one. So it's just a very different way of saying, hey, if we want to get in front of these younger consumers, maybe we should be in their world instead of in ours. What do you think? I know you have some teenagers at home.
Right. I mean, minimum, I think we need to be at least on TikTok. And I've been talking about TikTok for the last year. I launched a channel a year ago, kind of back and forth on, and most of what I'm doing is consuming and figuring out what people are doing. But I cannot tell you how many times I use my in-house lab, aka my 15-year-old, to let me know what the Gen Alpha, I think is what he is, what they're thinking. And I cannot tell you how many times he has come to me and said, I want to go buy X, Y, or Z, because he saw somebody doing some weirdo thing. Like, you would not believe what they do with grapes on TikTok. They coat them in lime juice and Jello powder or melted up Jolly Ranchers. This is the thing that they do to grapes now. But all of that to me is telling me that at least grapes are on the radar for the kids, and it's introducing them to a new idea that they wouldn't have. And then of course I've got the I want to go to Wendy's because there's some new sandwich, or I want to go to this place because I saw it on TikTok. And I'm like, dude, don't you realize that advertising is working right now? He doesn't care.
No. Well, and that's what I thought the interesting finding from what's new was we asked people, things that you do in your virtual worlds, do they impact your real life purchases? And overall, 18 said somewhat of an influence, and another 6% said, yeah, a decent amount of influence. So that means that 1 in 5, and of course, those numbers are far, far higher among younger consumers, they are recognizing that when I go to my virtual Walmart or I go to the virtual Chipotle, and you can actually order a burrito there, you can actually also play the person that puts them together and learn how all that works. They had a whole Halloween engagement where if you did certain activities, you could get a coupon that you can actually take to the restaurant and apply there. So it certainly seems that, really thinking about whether it's TikTok, Roblox, it doesn't really matter, but to engage with the young consumers, maybe we need to be where they live many hours a day. Because I think the big thing is when they're at the shelf, they spend seconds picking one versus the other. The entire time in the produce department is mere minutes, but they spend hours and hours on these different TikToks, virtual worlds, you name it. And so it seems like it's worth at least some consideration.
Well, and we have to think about, when I was growing up, TV commercials are incredibly effective means of reaching people. Billboards are one of the ones that you can see a lot of people using billboards, but a lot of kids nowadays aren't seeing a lot of that stuff. Yep. And a lot of the younger consumers are not consuming any of the traditional media. So there's no harm in trying out some programs to see if what if you were going in your Roblox store and the graphics maybe were better for strawberries than they were for chips, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, yeah, this strawberry was actually pretty cool that I bought in Roblox. Maybe it was the size of my head. And then it inspires the next time you take your kids to the store, they'll go, hey, I bought strawberries in my Roblox store and they seemed really cool. I want to have it this week. There is a connection there. And we have to think about where we're spending our advertising dollars and where we're trying to engage people. And you have to meet them where they are. And they are not watching TV anymore.
Certainly not cable anyhow. There's a lot of streaming happening, and yes, they are consuming very differently. And I thought, actually, talking about consuming differently, I thought the way the whole session itself worked, where we presented some of the data and then everybody got to be their own expert panel and chat for about 8 minutes in between sections. I think that is really sort of indicative of the discussion that we're having, right? Where we just consume knowledge in very different ways these days.
Yeah, and everyone wants to have their own input on it. Everyone wants to, share their own story of how they're experiencing that. And that's a really good way to do it, is to give everyone their own platform and to be, back in the day when you're talking about let's all split up into groups and introduce each other and whatever, that'll get a groan. But I can guarantee you that it did not feel like it was 8 minutes. Most of the time during those breaks, I still had stuff to say, and I know I'm a loud extrovert in the room, but I wasn't the only one who still had some input for it. So
no, and that's a good thing, right? Because that means later on at happy hour and lunch and everything else, people were still chatting about it. So I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's very successful. The other one that I saw, and I have a funny video of my own, is the robotic server that your kids have engaged with at the bowling alley. They have the kitty cat waitress that brings your food and drinks. I actually had one bring me a burger in Destin, Florida, and it kind of highlights a different aspect of it, where we're looking for ways to automate and technology. And one of my most successful videos on TikTok is the laser weeder from Carbon Robotics. People are really, whether or not they're interested in agriculture, they're interested in the ways that we're trying to make things more efficient and solve problems. And if it's got cute kitty cat ears and it's bringing you your burger at the bowling alley, that's even better.
Even better. No, I agree. I mean, there is a little bit, I call it the technology paradox, right? Where we're intrigued with technology, we can't live without technology, but there's also a little bit of concern. Is it replacing jobs? What does it do to the safety of the food? So here again, in our first episode, we talked about communicating, right? Why are you doing things? Are you doing it to prevent food waste? Are you doing it because you need to solve efficiencies, whatever it is? So I think a lot of times those kinds of things, kids, of course, love these robot things, but certainly a friend of mine is visiting Korea as we speak. She sent a video of the same robot coming around, not to deliver the food that was done by a person, but to put your dirty dishes on the robot. So certainly there's a lot of experimentation happening right now with what part of the store can you automate. A lot of the backdoor operations, certainly, and backroom operations. But, I think in grocery, we need to always remember that we are a people business. And when you talk to consumers, it certainly sometimes leads to that unplanned purchase or that extra unit in the basket that we've been looking for.
Yeah, one of the technology paradox slide cracks me up because you have three, I don't like this, okay, but if it doesn't replace jobs, or a great idea. And the two here that I'm seeing, AI to help on the farm, removing weeds, determining optimal ripeness, and robots help with harvesting produce. Almost half of the people you surveyed said, okay, but if it doesn't replace jobs. I can guarantee you that if they were out there harvesting produce, every one of those people would say, great idea.
Great idea. My very, very first job was picking strawberries. So I would agree. Yes.
Yeah, I have harvested a fair number of things in my life, and professionally, and just, growing up, and bucking hay bales is definitely something that I think a robot can do way better than I can do. And picking strawberries is another one of those that if we can automate this, I'm sure that the folks that are out there picking strawberries would much rather run the machine than be stacking them in the clamshells themselves.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would say where, just doing my man on the street interviews, where a lot of the irritation lies is when something shifts from the store, from the seller to the consumer themselves. So self-checkout, those kinds of things. Like if you can make those items less painful, then certainly there's a lot more acceptance happening.
Yeah, there's definitely a back and forth on self-checkout on whether or not people like it. Some people are introverts, and some people don't want to talk to anyone or have someone see what they're buying or whatever. They want to go through and do it themselves until you get the robot voice telling you you've done something wrong. And that's when you're like, oh, why did I do this?
Yeah.
Or at least that's my experience. I'm totally cool with self-checkout until they tell me to remove the item from the bag and replace the item in the bag.
And the whole system shuts down and you can't move forward.
Yes, that's when it's like, no thanks, never mind. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up here, but this has been a fascinating kind of dig into some of the findings from this survey. And of course, people can get a copy of their own. Where can they do that?
SCPC has their YouTube channel with all the education over the years, including this, and definitely contact the Southeast Produce Council for any and all. We're also going to put out a lot more information, articles, infographics. So really stay tuned for any and all.
All right. Well, thanks again, Anne-Marie. Appreciate the chat.
All right. Thank you.